everybody at some point has suffered from overthinking, and I think it's one of the things that just constantly comes up for me in my sessions with my clients. And you know what, it's something that really I used to struggle with a lot, is that monkey mind, that mind that just is constantly overthinking, not being able to settle at night because you're thinking about what I could have said, what I said, what I didn't say, what they think, what they didn't think, how I'm going to tackle this situation, what I could have done better, all the things, it's just this constant tragedy of that mind taking over, And so I want to give you just 5 really effective things that have worked for me and that work for my clients. So what I would say is, there's no one size fits all. Everybody has something, what Bashar would call a permission slip. Everybody has something that resonates better with them, something that works better for them. So you do what works for you, right? It might be multiple things, it might be one thing, it might be a little bit of trial and error, but do whatever feels like it would work for you. So, for example, I love to journal, and so the things where I'm writing, they work best for me. Whereas, my husband, he is really good at visualizing, so the things with respect to visualizing, they work better for him. So you just do whatever works for you. And for me, I know sometimes some things work and sometimes I've utilized other things, just whatever's resonating with me at that time, whatever works for me at that time. So the first one is find a better feeling thought. And what I mean by that is, there are those people, or what I don't mean by that is, when you're just in a really shitty place and somebody says to you, oh, you just gotta be positive. And you're like, oh, fuck off. Like, we've all had those people, right? Where you're just like, you are not in the mood for it. You've just had the worst time, the worst day. You've got, what I would call the perfect storm going on. So all of these things are happening in your life all at once, and you're just feeling like really crap. And then you go and speak to somebody, and they might be your friend who can be really uplifting and really positive, and they're just like, oh, you just need to, think more positive thoughts. That is not it. So that is not what it is. What it is finding a better feeling thought means one of 2 things. So one is, if this constant thought is coming into your mind and it's really playing, maybe it's a situation, maybe it's a certain person, maybe it's just an ongoing conflict or whatever it is, and you cannot find a better feeling thought about that situation, then get off it. Get completely off the subject. Get onto something that does make you feel good. So if you, for example, are struggling at work, you're struggling with your relationships at work, you're struggling with your boss at work, all of those things, and you feel like you really just can't do it anymore, then I would say get off that thought completely. Find something that is working in your life. So maybe you've got a really amazing group of friends that you hang out with. Maybe your relationship with your partner's going really well. Maybe you're physically really healthy and you love that part of what you do. Whatever it is, just find a way to get completely off that subject and focus in on what is going well and completely get off that subject. The other thing you can do is find a better feeling thought about whatever it is that you're overthinking. And what I mean by that is, so we can't go from that 0 to 100 like I explained. You can't go from I feel really crappy to I'm 100% amazing. But what you can do is find a slightly better feeling thought. So for example, it's like, I really can't stand my job. I hate my job. I hate getting up for my job every day. I'm so exhausted from my job. I can't stand my boss. it's just all the things. The better feeling thought then is not I love my job. So a lot of people would do this, right? I love my job, I love my job, I love my job. That's what they say. When I talk to my clients sometimes, I'm like, what do you tell yourself about that? And they're like, oh, I just drive to work like, I love my job, I love my job, I love my job. But they don't mean it, so it doesn't really do shit, you know what I mean? So a better feeling thought is when you start to think about the things that you do enjoy. So you're struggling with your boss, you're really overthinking it, you're exhausted, you don't like going to work. So what's a better feeling thought? A better feeling thought on that topic is, I really, really struggle with my boss at work, but I really enjoy my colleagues. I really, really enjoy going to work every day because they're fun. I really enjoy the times when we're just joking around and having a chat to each other. I really like the customers. I enjoy serving the people that come into our shop or that I talk to over the phone. That I really enjoy most of those interactions. I love that it's close to home. I love that I get paid every week, and I'm grateful that I get to pay my bills off of that role. So it's just finding something that feels a little bit better. And can I tell you, it takes your brain just 17 seconds to find, once you get in that momentum, so once you start to find something better, those, it's like law of attraction, right? So you start to attract better feeling thoughts, and you'll get on a bit of a train, you will get in this forward motion, in the emotion, your energy in motion, you'll start to feel better immediately. The other thing that I used to use this a lot, because I love to, if you've ever journaled or you have a gratitude journal or done any of that stuff, I really just enjoy writing. So this works really well for me. So I would always write my gratitudes, but if I was overthinking a situation, I would write at the top of the page, inactive, and I would write a list of all of the things that I was overthinking, just all of the things that I know wanted to be active in my life, and I would just cross them out and just make them inactive. And I'd even write across it inactive. Or you can script. A lot of people like to script. So if, for example, it's a situation where you've got somebody in your life that keeps coming up in a certain way, you can script it. So you can actually write how it would feel when you change the way the conversation goes. So perhaps if you're overthinking a situation you had, and you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't said that, I wish I hadn't done that, you can rewrite that script of what happened and say what you meant to say. Or if you've got something coming up that you're overthinking, you can write the script of what you want to say. That also works really well and leads into my third thing, which is visualizing that situation. So if, for example, you've got a really difficult relationship with somebody in your life, maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a friend, and you feel like there's so many things you want to say, but you don't feel empowered to say it, that's a really great time to do some of this. So you can either visualize the conversation, or what's even more effective is and it might feel a little crazy, but if you can imagine that person in front of you and you say to them all of the things that you have never had the balls to say, you know what I mean? You've never had the guts to say it, but you really just want to let loose on that person and say all of this stuff that's really, really bugging you and that you're overthinking. And this works really, really well with my clients who have done some timeline therapy and they've got stuff with parents, and it might even be somebody who's passed away. This can work really, really, really well. So get yourself in a space when you're on your own and imagine that person in front of you and say all the things that you always wanted to say. So this doesn't just work for overthinking, it can actually work in terms of, healing some of that stuff especially if you don't have that person in your life anymore and you've got things that you need to say. The other thing is just stop talking about it. Stop constantly talking about the issue, whatever it is. Oh, I don't get paid enough. Oh God, I'm so rubbish at my diet is just so crap and I'm just so bad. I hate my body. I can't stand the way I look. I hate how I can't seem to stick to anything. I can't stick to my gym membership. So just constantly talking about this stuff. And what I would say is depression lives in the past, anxiety lives in the future. So if you are constantly talking about a situation from the past, so every time you do that, you bring it into your present. You bring it into your current situation. So whenever you're talking about something that's happened where you feel as though you've been wronged, you bring all of that emotion into your present world. And that means it's really difficult for you. If you're bringing it into your present motion, your energy and motion, your emotions, that is where you create. So all creation lives in the present. So if you're constantly talking about your past, something that happened in the past, even if it was like yesterday, but certainly if it was years ago, and that's why I'm not big on talk therapy where you constantly bring up the past. There is no value in that, because you're constantly bringing that energy and motion, that emotion into your current state, which is where you create. And that's why it's so damaging. Same goes for anxiety. So you're thinking about what is happening and what might happen. So the past and the depression is the shoulda, woulda, coulda, and the anxiety is I'm so afraid of what might happen, what could happen. And whenever you think and talk about, I'm so afraid of this, I'm so afraid of that, I'm worried about this, I'm worried, and worry is a prayer for what you don't want. That's what I used to tell my kids all the time. Worry is a prayer for what you don't want. When you're constantly worrying and stressing about a situation, you are bringing that situation into your present, and you are essentially manifesting from that present moment exactly what you probably don't want. So to get off it, stop talking about it, stop consistently talking about it to other people, because the other thing that happens is you will tell somebody about a situation that happened or something you're stressed about happening, and then that person will continuously remind you of it. And even if it's in a loving way, right? So your partner might say to you, oh, how are you feeling today? Oh my God, I know you had the worst day yesterday, and and I know your boss didn't treat you well, or I know it didn't go well at the gym, I know you're exhausted, all of those things. And they're bringing it into the present for you as well. So they're reminding you. So not only are you reminding yourself, but then you have other people who are constantly reminding you, good meaning friends, all of those things. So stop talking about it. And my very last one is, ask yourself, what is the worst that could happen? What is the absolute worst thing that could happen? So I give a really good example of that is, I can't even tell you the number of jobs that I've manifested that I had zero business having. You know what I mean? And so I've manifested just the most incredible jobs, really well-paying jobs, which I absolutely adored. And I would apply for these things and quite honestly didn't have anywhere near the skill set, and I would just figure it out when I got the job. I was a really good employee, don't get me wrong, but I never, a lot of times people, if they saw my resume versus what I was applying for, they would absolutely be like, why would you apply for that? You don't have the skills for that. But I would always ask myself, what's the worst that could happen? What is the worst thing that could happen? I just don't get the job. I apply and I just don't get the job. Like, is that really the worst thing? And same thing, I would always say this to my kids, what's the worst that can happen? You're going to ask the question and they're going to say, no, that might be the worst that can happen. So I guess it's like, what is the worst that can happen? And if that was the worst, could you live with it? If that was the worst that could happen, could you live with it? So you didn't end up with the opportunity. So you had the conversation and it didn't go as well as you hoped. But you asked for the pay rise and they didn't give it to you. Is it going to be as, don't catastrophize, don't make it bigger than what it is and make it into this, this could happen and that. Just be really kind of real about it. What could really, really happen? What's the worst that could happen? And then decide if you want to go ahead or if you don't. And what I would also say is The only time we have 2020 vision is in hindsight. That's the only time. You can write as many lists as you want, as many, what ifs and pros and cons and all the things. But at the end of the day, people that are adventurous, people who are successful, people are the people who are brave, who make brave decisions and just go for it. So instead of overthinking it and stressing about it, ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then, you know what? If it's kind of like not the worst thing, I 100% say go for it. Run the experiment. You just see what would happen. See what happens, because you might be so surprised. Life, when you're brave, life can give you just the best results. So just go and do something brave. I hope that's really helped you. And I appreciate you watching for as long as you have. I'll talk to you soon.